Life in the West, the Mormons. In 1846, a wagon train of pioneers headed west in search of a new home. Looking down on the shining surface of Great Salt Lake in what is now Utah, their leader, Brigham Young, declared, "This is the place." It was not a promising spot. One pioneer described the valley as a broad and barren plain, blistering in the rays of the midsummer sun. A woman wrote, "Weak and weary as I am, I would rather go 1,000 miles further than remain." But that was one of the valley's attractions. No one else wanted the place that Brigham Young claimed for his followers, the Mormons. A persecuted group. The Mormons were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Joseph Smith had founded this church in New York in 1830. Smith taught that he had received a sacred book, the Book of Mormon, from an angel. He believed it was his task to create a community of believers who would serve God faithfully. Smith's followers lived in close communities, working hard and sharing their goods. Yet wherever they settled, first New York, then Ohio, Missouri, and Illinois, their neighbors persecuted them. Many people were offended by the Mormons' teachings, especially their acceptance of polygamy, the practice of having more than one wife. Others resented the Mormons' rapidly growing power and wealth. In 1844, resentment turned to violence when a mob in Illinois killed Joseph Smith. After Smith's death, Brigham Young took over as leader of the Mormons. Young decided to move his community to Utah. There, the Mormons might be left alone to follow their faith in peace. West to Utah, Young turned out to be a practical as well as religious leader. "Prayer is good," he said, "but when baked potatoes and pudding and milk are needed, prayer will not supply their place." Young carefully planned every detail of the trek to Utah. The pioneers he led west stopped along the way to build shelters and plant crops for those who would follow. Even with all this planning, the journey was difficult. "We soon thought it unusual," wrote one Mormon, "to leave a campground without bearing one or more persons." When he arrived at Great Salt Lake, Young laid out his first settlement, Salt Lake City. By the time he died in 1877, Utah had 125,000 Mormons living in 500 settlements. To survive in this dry country, Mormons had to learn new ways to farm. They built dams, canals, and irrigation ditches to carry precious water from mountain streams to their farms in the valley. With this water, they made the desert bloom. The Mormons' legacy. The Mormons were the first Americans to settle the Great Basin. They pioneered the farming methods adopted by later settlers of this dry region. They also helped settlers make their way west. Salt Lake City quickly became an important stop for travelers in need of food and supplies. To the Mormons, however, their greatest legacy was the faith they planted so firmly in the Utah desert. From its center in Salt Lake City, the Mormon Church has grown into a worldwide religion with more than 11 million members.